Good morning. It's a nice, brisk, cool morning here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Got a fair amount of rain overnight, which isn't really ideal for this waterfall. This waterfall already has plenty of flow naturally, and it's one of those waterfalls I think that looks best when the flow isn't raging. So I'm a little weary as to what it's going to look like up here. Got about maybe a little less than a mile left to go before I reach the waterfall. But there's all kinds of cool little areas along this river leading up to the waterfall that's got nice, that I think has the potential for some nice composition. So I'm kind of in that conundrum. Do I walk all the way to the waterfall, or do I stop and try and create something along the way? So as I expected, the flow from the rain last night is a little bit too much for this waterfall. It just wasn't quite as photogenic. It looks better under lower amounts of flow. We get kind of this just smaller kind of, I guess, striations of water versus just plumes of water flying off this waterfall. Plus there was just tons of waterfall spray everywhere. A lot of the trail was kind of overwashed some. It just wasn't the safest situation. Maybe normally I would have encountered it, but I just don't think it was going to be quite photogenic enough for any potential risk that might be associated with it. Plus, I'm testing out a new camera today that I don't own. I might own it. I'm renting it for about 30 days or borrowing it, and it's probably, no, I'm not going to say probably, it is the most expensive camera lens combination that I've ever used, and I definitely do not feel comfortable enough to get out there in a situation that could potentially result in the destruction of this camera that's not mine. So I decided to come to this area right here, which I've never been before. I've walked by it many times, but I really didn't pay much attention because it just didn't look that amazing. But with the increased flow, this is a benefit of that, to where this location here, before you even get to the waterfall, I went there, came back, saw this, and this looks pretty good. So I think I'm going to set up a shot here. There's a couple different things to work with behind me, so I'm going to go ahead and get things unpacked and see what I can come up with. So the camera settings that I have dialed in right now are f11, shutter speed of 1/5 of a second, ISO 400, and just playing with different shutter speeds, like I mentioned earlier, just trying to get that perfect amount of movement in the water without blurring it too much. Zooming in, the detail is absolutely incredible. See, I don't like that shutter speed right there. That's too much blur, so I'm gonna increase my ISO just a touch while at the same time reducing my shutter speed. And let's see what that does right there. See if we like that any better. Playback, zoom in. It's getting there. That looks pretty good there, but I think just a little bit slower. See. I also have a circular polarizer on here as well, which I believe is a must-have for whenever you're photographing water. So now that's starting to look pretty good right there. A little bit more fine tweaking, but we're getting close, and you can really see the difference in what this polarizer does. That's with no polarization applied right there. I don't even know if you can see that. That's no polarization, and that's with polarization. So big dramatic difference. So normally I would be probably in the water with my water shoes and water socks on, because the flow's not too bad right here. Definitely safe enough to get in the water, but I didn't bring them. They're in the van still, and I did not feel comfortable enough getting in the water with this camera. Like I mentioned, I don't own it yet. I am notorious for testing things out and falling in love with them very quickly and then ending up buying it. And so far, I'm really enjoying this camera. It's something just completely foreign from what I'm used to using. It's almost like you're not even using a camera. It's like a completely different device. So it's pretty cool so far. I've only experimented with it a little bit, you know, taking photos of my dog's eyes at home, like really zoomed in so I could see the resolution, and it is pretty insane. But I really am looking forward to getting it in kind of a real world landscape photography scenario to really kind of test it out and see exactly what it can do. So here's a close-up shot of the composition. I like the way it's coming together. It's got good separation between the foreground, the midground, and the background. I like this little area right here in the foreground and how that rock's kind of pointing to it. Then you got the converging of the waterfalls together, and it's exiting the bottom left-hand corner of the image. So I think from a compositional perspective, it looks good. They were predicting some fog. There's a little bit of fog out here right now, but not a whole lot. It'd be a little bit better if there was a touch more. But the conditions are pretty good. It's not, well, I guess there is some blue sky up there, but it's not too terribly bright right here. There's no direct light on the actual waterfall. I shouldn't say that. There's a little bit of ambient light, which is perfect. Just highlighting a lot of the detail in the actual composition, but just no direct light on there. Just kind of making the actual waterfall glisten with those highlights that end up being very distracting. So overall, the conditions are pretty good. So the light is starting to get pretty good. It's real soft, muted light. It's kind of coating the entire composition right here. Nothing too much, just enough to show a little bit of detail in the rocks and just kind of add a little bit of that kind of, you know, oomph to the overall composition. The lighting earlier was just a little bit, I guess, muted, a little bit flat, which isn't always bad for waterfall photography. That's usually what you want. But having just a little bit of light, as long as it's very soft, is perfect. Something else that's really cool about this camera is this little top screen right here that you can set up multiple different ways. You can show your, is that the button? One of these buttons changes. Oh, there we go. Different dials, kind of like the X series. You have your shutter speed, your ISO. You can show your histogram right there. You can show all your settings there. It's pretty cool. It's nice to be able to have that right on the top dial here, so you don't always have to kind of refer right down there. But not a major thing, but it's still a small feature that I definitely appreciate. Looks like it's starting to rain a little bit. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm zoomed all the way, almost all the way into 64 millimeters, and this is kind of adding just enough of that compression to the overall scene. So I ended up walking back up to the waterfall again, or the main waterfall, and there's just nothing there that I can safely get to with this camera. But on the way back to the van, I stumbled upon this composition, which I'm really excited about. It's a very simple composition, but the way the lighting is right now, the lighting is absolutely fantastic. It is so subtle. It's a little bit dappled pockets here and there, but it just makes for really interesting light in a very high dynamic scene. Not high dynamic scene as far as contrasting light, not extreme highlights or extreme shadows, but just a very interesting scene, I should say. But I got the circular polarizer on right now, zoomed all the way into 64 millimeters, and I'll show you exactly what the composition is right here. You got these logs kind of intersecting in the top left-hand corner, and every once in a while, light starts to illuminate this main log right here. And really just kind of brings the whole composition to life, because you can see all of the detail and the dimension in the log right there. Very intimate scene, small, quiet scene. I really like it. I have the polarizer on. Full polarization is to take any kind of shine or reflection off of the rocks right through here. But this probably is the composition that I'm most excited about that I've discovered today. Once again, I'm having to do a 3-shot focus stack. I'm definitely trying to get a little bit more used to this camera, and I'm having a hard time getting the entire scene in focus, even though there's nothing super close to my lens. But nevertheless, having to do a 3-shot focus stack, one for the log, the waterfall, and then deep in the background, and able to get everything in sharp focus. So I'm going to take a couple more shots of this composition, then I'm going to pack things up, head back to the van, get some lunch, put some of these photos on the computer. I need to dump some of the SD cards off of the Fuji GFX100s because those files are huge and I'm quickly filling up SD cards. So we need to dump that footage. And then I'm going to head up to another waterfall that's really high up in the Blue Ridge Parkway. And it's going to take a little bit of time to get up there, but the clouds are supposed to build in throughout the day, so I should have great light throughout the entire day to photograph any type of moving water. So conditions could not be better. So this is a waterfall that I have wanted to photograph for quite some time now, and I've just never gotten around to doing, and I don't know why I took so long. I drug my feet because this waterfall is absolutely breathtaking. It's not a massive waterfall, maybe 10 or maybe 20 feet tall, but it's just down in this like cavern, and the rocks that kind of lead up to it just look otherworldly. It's an absolutely gorgeous composition. And the waterfall itself is like 3 waterfalls that kind of funnel down into one. But all of the rocks surrounding it that just kind of draw the eye up into the waterfall is just absolutely incredible. So here's the composition that I have right here. Let me zoom in. You can see all the detail in the rocks that kind of drawing the eye into the waterfall right there, and then there's a little bit of light peeking through at the top of the waterfall, which is just perfect. I mean, it's perfectly placed. Oops, turn that back on. I wish I had a little bit wider of a focal length. I only have the 32 to 40, what is this? A 32 to 64, which I believe is a full frame equivalent of about a 25 to 50. I could use something a little bit wider right here, but I really do like this composition. It's coming together nicely. A little bit of light every once in a while hits this area. Very nice. So I do have to admit, I lied to you. I apologize. I ended up putting on my water shoes and socks and got in the water here. It's not too deep, but it was necessary to get to this composition. It wasn't too far, just kind of over there. You can see my bag over there in the corner. Just kind of walk through there. But I think it's worth it, and it seems safe enough. So right now I'm at f11, shutter speed 1/13 of a second, ISO 640. Just playing with different shutter speeds again, trying to get the right amount of motion in the water. Not too smooth, not too much detail, just trying to get that perfect blend. And playing with different compositions, trying to figure out how best I can include as much of these rocks as possible and still get as much of the waterfall as well. Like I just mentioned, a little bit wider of a focal length would be nice, but can't complain about that. I don't have it. All I have is the 32 to 64, but such a great waterfall. We've got the polarizer on, not quite full polarization because the light is getting pretty dim right now, but I'm going to kind of make a few more tweaks to this composition. It's pretty straightforward, honestly. There's not a whole lot you can really do. I would like to get a little bit closer to the waterfall, but there's a water pool, I guess, right in front of where I'm at right now, and that looks to be about 5 feet deep, and that's too deep for for my liking right now with this camera, so I'm going to stay right where I'm at. The light is changing very quickly and I keep having to adjust my polarizer here. I want not max polarization, but pretty close to it. I think about right there looks good. So I'm going to hang around and take a few more versions of this composition just to make sure I get as many different variations as I possibly can, because I'm certain that I'm going to like one of them when I get it back home on the computer. And hang out here for a little bit longer. I think there's probably about another hour's worth of usable light. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up from the video perspective. I'm afraid I might be pushing my luck with 2 cameras in the water, balancing it in this little stream here. So I figure I better call it a day here, but I really do hope you enjoyed this week's video, and if you did enjoy it, if you could give it that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And as always, I really do appreciate you watching this week's video, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.